Welcome, everybody, to this week's critique for the Brian Peterson School of Photography. I'm Lee Varis. I'm one of the instructors here. I teach a Photoshop Layers Fundamentals course and a portrait retouching course, but I'm more than just a post-processing person. I'm a photographer in my own right. And enough about me. Let's just dive in here. And we'll start with this shot here. This is a really fabulous shot, and now let me call up the information here. Um, let's see, artist called Artist Point, Yosemite. This is by Jim Bennett, and this is just a great classic shot. You found the exact classic location to take this overview of the valley, and Jim writes that the image was taken from Artist Point in Yosemite, and it's a merge of three image. So it's at 3 a.m. He got up really early in the morning to take some Milky Way shots, and then decided to just wait for the sun. So let's see, it was a bit cold and the sky was cloudless, and sadly there was nothing interesting happening with Mr. Fog in the valley, which can really make for interesting images. So I tried to capture the exact moment the sun broke over Cathedral Rocks with a tiny aperture to get a nice sun star. He then goes on to say, I probably went overboard with f/22 as the image is a little degraded by diffraction. Well, I think we cut you some slack for that. I think the f/22 is probably appropriate to get such a nice star. It's really nice and clear here. Um, so fantastic shot. I mean, unfortunately, you didn't have any great clouds in the sky, but this was a great solution to provide some interest. You've got some nice lighting over here. The only thing I can think of to make this a little bit better is to get just a little more color in the star here, and that's a little tricky. So I'll show you a quick little tip here um, using we're going to take this image into LAB. So we'll do this really quickly. It's pretty easy. Whenever you need to add some saturation and color enhancement, it's actually much easier to do that in LAB. And so I'll show you this little trick. We convert first to LAB, so that's image mode, and we went into LAB. And then I'm just going to add a regular curve. I'm not doing anything to it. I'm just going to add a curve, and we're going to place that curve adjustment layer, which has been unadjusted, into overlay. And you'll notice it gets really contrasty because overlay is essentially we're taking the image, the uncorrected curve of the image, and applying it to itself in overlay mode, which enhances the contrast. But in LAB, we have this additional trick that we can do. So here's the trick. I'm going to go to my layer options flyaway menu, and I'm going to select blending options. So these are additional blending options besides that putting the blend mode into overlay, as you can see again over here. I'm going to uncheck the L channel. So here's our advanced blending options here. Uncheck the L channel. So now we're not adding contrast to the luminosity, we're only adding contrast to the A and B channels, which carry the color. And we're going to blend out the blue color enhancement, which is in the B channel. So I'm going to select blend if. I'm going to go to the B channel, and we're going to move the black slider in the underlying layer, just move it over to the center to 128. And then basically that says, okay, everywhere that this image is more blue than it is yellow, which would be everywhere except in the sun star and some down here, we're going to blend through the background, which is unenhanced. So what we've done here is we've now just kind of popped the saturation for that yellow sun star. And we can probably play around with this a little more if you wanted even more saturation. Could come in here to the B channel, and let's zoom in just a little bit here because I want to look at the star. If we add just a little more warmth in it, now you see it's starting to posterize there. So perhaps I won't do that. Maybe we can pull it up just a little bit like that. Okay, so we're getting just a little bit more yellow. In fact, I'm not going to really do too much with that curve because it's doing enough as it is. And we've got the benefit of the additional enhancement here. But by using LAB, we can do those little blend if tricks, and it's much easier to control how that yellow is applied in the image. So that just gives it just a little more color than it had before. And I think, maybe that's a little bit of an enhancement. If you feel like it's too much, we can change the opacity. Okay, so great shot overall. It's too bad you didn't have any clouds, but I think this really was the solution here for this particular day to try to get some more interest into a classic view of Yosemite Valley. All right, so thank you there, Jim. And let's go on to this one. Okay, so Prayers is by, now I'm going to pronounce this name, but I'm sure I'm going to get it wrong, Gaganpreet Singh. Clearly shot in India. This shot was about half an hour into sunrise on the banks of the Ganges at Banaras. The gentleman here is offering his daily prayers to the sun god after taking a dip in the holy Ganges. I was on a boat with my back to the sun when I took the picture. The reflections of the nearby Ghat steps can be partially seen in the water behind the old man. And then his camera settings, f11 at 1/60th of a second, ISO 160. Basic color correction performed in Photoshop. Okay, no cropping or additions or deletions made to this image. I think this is a great image. I think the camera viewpoint high and looking down places the water behind him, which is very good. In this sort of image, his body is right in the center, and he's not. I mean, he's got his eyes closed, but he's sort of facing in this direction here, and his line of sight goes right out of frame. Okay, so usually it's a good idea in this kind of situation to try and place more space in front of his head than behind his head. Okay, so a little bit, maybe backing up and tilting the camera just a little bit to leave a little more space on this side, I think would be a good solution for that. However, we can probably adjust this using content aware scale. So let's try. I'm gonna go ahead here and we're going to canvas the image out. So I'll go image, canvas size, and I'm just going to make it a square just for cropping purposes. So I'm adding all this space over here. Now here's the trick. It's kind of cool. Let's put a selection on there, and then we're going to go to the edit menu and select content aware scale. And now we're going to add some width to this, and Photoshop's going to try automatically. It tries to protect anything that looks like a person. So you can kind of see he's shifting over a little bit, but his head isn't getting distorted. He's starting to his shoulders are getting a little wider here. I think I can probably stop right now, and then we're just going to recrop this. So bring this in here. We'll crop to here, and now we've repositioned him to give him a little more space in front of him. And oops, let's try that again. Crop a little bit from this side here. If you find that your crop is snapping like this, hold down the Control or Alt key, and you can kind of fine tune it that way. All right, so I think that looks better than that, and as far as a placement. And the only other thing I would do here is it seems a little cold, the color temperature, as his gray hair is looking kind of blue here. And although it's probably reasonable from the key light, which is the sun, it looks a little too neutral. I'd like to warm it up, so I'm gonna actually do a little trick here with the curve tool and use. So I've got a curve adjustment layer, and I'm going to use this little gray eyedropper and click on the gray hair to neutralize it, and that warms it up nicely. So now it looks a little more like that sunrise color. It's a little more golden. So otherwise, it's a great shot, great lighting, great mood, and a great perspective. So I hope you can see if that looks just a little bit better than this. But really a great shot. Okay, so thank you, Gangan Preet. Sorry, I know there's another way to pronounce that, but all right. So let's take a look at our next one. Now this is a great shot. This is our Silver Forks by Jeffrey Heydrich. And he says, I got the inspiration for this image from Brian Peterson himself by his Perfect Picture DVD. I intertwined 3 sterling silver forks and set them atop some reflective wrapping paper. And using my Pentax K5 with a very old film camera days macro lens, built for dentists, I believe, I got the composition that I wanted. And I think this is just a fabulous image. It's a great idea. And I don't have any Photoshop tricks here to enhance it or anything. I think one thing the only thing I can think of that I'd like you to try this. I think it might, because you could easily reshoot this. I think if you shot this and change the quality of light, because we have a very kind of hard, contrasty lights, very kind of specular. We've got hot highlights and deep shadows. I'd like you to try reshooting this and just put a sheet over your head, a white sheet, and so that you can kind of create a soft wrapping light all the way around everything. So that way these dark highlights will pick up some light. We'll see a little more of the structure of the forks and a little less of this hard texture detail on the forks. The other thing you could do is, since this is such a small object that you're photographing in macros, get one of those giant styrofoam cups and cut the bottom out of it, put your lens in it, and put that down on top of this. And again, you'll get that same effect of the white light wrapping around everything. And so the silver forks will reflect more white light and less dark light, and you'll get a different shot. It may be better. So worth trying, but I really love the idea, and I think this is just fabulous. So thank you, Jeffrey. Okay, and now we come to Madrid at Night. And let's see, this is by Michael Diamant. Not sure if I got that last name correct. Near our hotel was a cinema and a building adjacent to the bright lights of the cinema reflecting off the windows and doors of the building. So that's all the information I have on this. And you can see really great kind of colorful reflections in here. This is it's an interesting shot, but you know, with this type of subject, it's really it's almost, it looks sort of drunk because it's tilted and everything's tilted on it, and it's really looks so symmetrical and so regular and grid-like that it has a sort of uncomfortable feeling. So let's see if we can't kind of correct all these tilts. Again, this is sort of Photoshop trick here. You could go into lens corrections over here, but actually none of that's going to work. I think the thing that'll work the best for this is to use the crop tool, but there's a special version of the crop tool called the perspective crop tool. So we're going to select that, and I'm going to place a crop over the image here. Now the perspective crop tool allows you to take the corners and just line them up so I'm trying to get the lines to line up here, and I'm going to get the horizontal lines in the grid by moving the endpoint. I'm going to get that to line up with, so we'll pick this railing here, and I'll try to get those lines to line up. Okay, and then I'm going to bring this point in just a little bit to get this to line up along the edges of the windows. So I've got a pretty reasonable it looks pretty reasonable. It's lining up much better. Let's go ahead and crop out this row of windows because they're going to get cropped anyway. So we'll kind of bring that in, and I'm just checking again to make sure that both my horizontal grid lines and my vertical grid lines are lining up with the windows. So I've moved two of the endpoints slightly differently. And now let's just go ahead and commit to the crop. And it's sort of lined them up now in a more regular, it looks a little bit better. Maybe this side I didn't get it quite right. Um, and perhaps we can also crop out that little bit of white space. I'm holding down the control on the Mac here to, oops, get this to not snap to the edge. So I can just bring that in. So, with this sort of regular thing, it would have probably been better if you somehow positioned yourself to get a little bit nicer straight on angle, but then perhaps your reflections wouldn't line up. So I would do something like this. It just seems like it really demands a little more uh, regular grid-like placement in the image to get, to get the windows to be more regularly spaced and lined up. Otherwise, I think it's kind of an interesting thing. We've got all these different windows. It would be nice, ideally, to have something that breaks the pattern, and that would also help this image just a little bit. Let's zoom out just a little bit. So somebody standing in the window, of course, you can't exactly call somebody up and say, hey, could you go stand out in the window there for me while I take this shot? But very interesting shot. I think you have really interesting reflections. Just a suggestion that you can try to get this more regular. But thank you, Michael, and let's go on. Let's see. And we have the last one is the macaroons. this is just a fabulous shot. I love the placement of the sharp macaroon here. Very colorful. I love the color scheme and this idea of panning and getting the movement here is just fabulous. Let's see what this is. Jose Mahi. I hope that's correct again. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing those names. And he says, I like the movement, graphics, and photography. My intention was to create a fun, colorful, and dynamic image for macaroons. I used a tripod. The photo was taken outside, natural light coming from the left with a colorful background and a reflector. I took a static picture and then a second one by moving the camera from left to right. And then I merged the two layers in Photoshop. Settings f8 at 1/10 of a second. That's for the motion and 85mm lens. I'd like a review about the general balance of the image, its effect, and colors. Thank you. Well, as I said, I can't find anything wrong here or anything that would improve this. I love the placement. You've got the sharp macaroon kind of in one of those 1/3 line. In fact, if we put let's put a crop on this and show. Let's see. I can show the rule of thirds here. And I think we have to actually move it to get that rule. There you go. So you've got the macaroon pretty much right at that one of those 1/3 intersection points. So that's kind of a power point. Exactly. It's not exactly on it, but it's so close that I think that this really works well. And also the line of action here of these moving macaroons is also close to that 1/3 line. It's a little bit away from the center. I can see, where this is sort of the line right here where these macaroons are resting. So I would say overall your balance is entirely correct. You could have perhaps put them along the 1/3 along the top, but I don't think that would improve it any more than it already is. And I just think the pastel color scheme and everything works really well. So, I don't have any suggestions here, Jose. So I'd say kudos to you. You got a great one in there. And all of these pictures have really been really fabulous. I've just offered a few suggestions for how to improve them. So thank you all very much, and stay tuned for next week's critiques.